Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Deuteronomy chapter 15 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're going to take a really close look at what happens when an entire society hits a massive, nationwide financial reset button. It's an incredible chapter, so let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll cover the context and seventh-year debts. Then, generosity toward the poor, freeing the Hebrew servants, dedicating firstborn herd animals, and we'll wrap up with key ideas and clarifications, followed by practical lessons and a quick recap.
Section 1. Context and seventh-year debts.
So, picture this. The Israelites are standing right on the edge of the Promised Land. Before they enter, Moses lays out this massive economic reset. His goal? To prevent a permanent underclass from forming. Verse 1 opens with an absolutely non-negotiable command about a mandatory, nationwide cancellation of debts. The Hebrew text says simply, "At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release." There's literally no negotiation here, none. Every 7 years, the entire nation has to hit a hard reset button on personal debt. It's a genuinely groundbreaking financial law designed to prevent a society where, the rich just get permanently richer and the poor are stuck getting permanently poorer.
Imagine if your modern bank just totally wiped out all of your personal debts every 7 years. That's exactly what this year of release guarantees. It ensures an Israelite literally cannot fall into permanent financial ruin or endless debt to their neighbor. Verses 2 through 6 clarify exactly how this works. Every single creditor who lent anything to their neighbor has to release it. They are legally forbidden from demanding payment from a fellow Israelite brother, simply because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been officially proclaimed. And the ultimate goal here? As verse 4 tells us, it wasn't just about handing out temporary charity. It was aiming for the complete eradication of poverty within the community, so that there should be no poor among them. God actually promises to richly bless the people in this new land they're inheriting, provided they fully obey these commands. In fact, if they do, verse 6 says, they'll lend to many nations but borrow from none, and they'll rule over many nations without being ruled over themselves. That is a massive promise.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the distinction made in verse 3. You might be wondering, why allow debt collection from a foreigner, but completely ban it for an Israelite? Well, verses 2 through 6 draw a really clear contrast. A foreigner, in this specific context, usually meant a temporary traveling merchant, someone just passing through for business. Since they weren't bound by the Israelite sabbatical year cycle, collecting from them was just standard everyday commerce. But for a brother, a fellow member of the covenant community actually living in the land, that debt must be dropped entirely, zero balance, all so that there will be no poor among them.
Section 2. Generosity toward the poor. Now, it's one thing to have a law on the books, right? But it is a whole different story dealing with the human heart. Moses knows exactly how people think when it comes to their own wallets. Imagine it's year 6. A poor brother comes to you asking for a loan just to survive. You know for a fact that next year, the debt will be legally canceled and you are not getting that money back. Moses directly warns the people not to harbor that base, tight-fisted thought of denying a loan just because the debt cancellation year is rapidly approaching. Verse 9 explicitly warns, "Beware that there be not a base thought in thy heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand." The ancient text literally describes viewing your brother with an evil eye, basically a look of intense stinginess. If you give him nothing, he'll cry out to the Lord against you, and you will absolutely be found guilty of a sin.
So, the crucial point here is that God demands open-handedness and promises divine blessing as a direct reward. Verse 10 says you must give generously, and crucially, your heart must not be grieved when you do it. Why? Because in return for this ungrudging generosity, the Lord will bless you in all your work. Now notice the brilliant paradox here. Back in verse 4, Moses said there should be no poor among you. But then right here in verse 11, he states a really profound reality. There will always be poor people in the land. Even with debt cancellations, well, life happens, doesn't it? Crops fail, accidents occur. This tension, that poverty is an inevitable reality of life, is exactly why the command is so relentless. You must consistently open your hand to your brother, to the poor, and to the needy in your land.
Section 3. Freeing the Hebrew servants.
Moving linearly into verses 12 through 18, the text completely shifts gears from financial debts to human labor. In the ancient world, if a person fell into extreme, insurmountable poverty, their only option to survive might be to sell their labor to a wealthier neighbor. But verse 12 puts a hard cap on this kind of servitude. If a Hebrew man or woman sells themselves to you, they serve for exactly 6 years. And in the 7th year, you must let them go free. After 6 years of labor, they are a free citizen once again.
They absolutely cannot be held indefinitely. No exceptions.
And this next part brilliantly illustrates the simple meaning of the text. You don't just send them out the door empty-handed. You must physically equip them. Verses 13 and 14 command the master to supply the outgoing servant liberally from the flock, the threshing floor, and the winepress. You are essentially handing them the seed capital they need to start fresh. And why do this? Verse 15 gives us the core reason. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Israel's entire social ethic is totally rooted in this shared historical memory of being slaves who were liberated. You have to treat them with the exact same generosity that God showed you.
But what if this servant actually loves your household and simply chooses not to leave? Because the master has treated them so incredibly well, a servant might actually say, "I will not go out from thee." Verses 16 and 17 outline a very specific, highly visible, and physical procedure at the doorway to make that service permanent. The master takes an awl, which is a sharp, pointed metal tool, and thrusts it right through the servant's earlobe and into the doorposts of the house. This visceral, physical mark signifies that they are now a bondman to that household for life. The text makes sure to note this applies to female servants as well. Verse 18 then wraps this section up by telling masters not to resent letting a servant go. After all, they've provided 6 years of labor, worth twice that of a hired hand, and God promises to richly bless the master for letting them go freely.
Section 4. Dedicating firstborn herd animals.
Okay, let's look at the final legal movement in verses 19 through 23. This deals with the sanctification of livestock, and it shifts our focus from how we treat our neighbors to how we directly honor God with our agricultural wealth. Verse 19 says, "You must set apart every firstborn male of your herds and flocks to the Lord." That means it must be totally dedicated to God. Think about what a major financial sacrifice this was for a farmer. You are explicitly forbidden to put a perfectly good firstborn ox to the plow for your own everyday labor, and you absolutely cannot shear the wool of the firstborn sheep for profit. They belong entirely to the Creator. Verse 20 then instructs that each year you and your household are to eat this animal in the presence of the Lord, at the specific place God will choose, as a holy communal meal of thanksgiving.
But notice the really striking contrast here in verses 21 and 22. A perfect animal becomes a holy meal in God's presence. But if a firstborn animal is blind or lame, if it has a serious flaw, God requires that you do not sacrifice it. God requires unblemished offerings. So instead, you keep it in your own town, and anyone, whether ceremonially clean or unclean, can eat it just exactly as they would eat wild game like a gazelle or a deer. However, verse 23 maintains one absolute, unbreakable rule. You must not eat the blood. You must pour it out on the ground like water.
Section 5. Key Ideas and Clarifications. Having walked step by step through the entire chapter, let's take a step back and clarify the core literal concepts we've uncovered. Because this chapter isn't just some random list of rules. It represents a beautifully unified, brilliant system for managing a healthy, holy society. The simple literal meaning centers on 3 core ideas. First, economic resets prevent a permanent underclass. That 7th-year release stops generational poverty right in its tracks. Second, empathy is driven by remembering the Egyptian bondage. The laws regarding Hebrew servants forced the Israelites to look in the mirror and remember that they were once at the very bottom of the social ladder. And third, holiness applies to time, people, and property. It's a constant reminder that the absolute first and best of everything they own ultimately comes from and belongs to the Creator.
To clarify some of the ancient terms we encountered, let's take a quick look at the threshing floor and winepress. A threshing floor was where grain was separated to make bread, and the winepress was where grapes were crushed. In that society, these represented the core wealth and sustenance of the land. So, by commanding a master to give from the threshing floor and winepress, the text simply means providing a newly freed servant with real, tangible wealth so they can restart their life successfully. The master was essentially handing them the necessary seed capital to start their own independent farm. This ensured they wouldn't just fall right back into poverty and servitude the very next week. Honestly, it's an incredibly brilliant and deeply compassionate economic system.
Section 6. Practical Lessons in Recap.
Now, while we obviously may not live in an ancient agrarian society with threshing floors and indentured servants, the human heart remains exactly the same today. The practical life lessons for us begin with practicing open-handed, ungrudging generosity. When we see someone in need, we shouldn't be calculating the bare minimum we can get away with giving.
Second, we must never let legal technicalities or loopholes override our actual compassion for a needy neighbor. Third, just as the Israelites were told to furnish their outgoing workers liberally, we've got to ensure those who work for us are treated with immense dignity and fair provision. And finally, just as those firstborn animals were set apart, we must dedicate our absolute best, the first fruits of our time, our energy, and our resources, to the Creator.
This single verse perfectly captures the beating heart of Deuteronomy 15. Thou shalt not harden thy heart, nor shut thy hand from thy needy brother. I mean, it demands a life of active, relentless compassion. We're called to keep our hearts soft and our hands open, remembering that literally everything we have is a gift, and we are simply stewards asked to care for one another. So the crucial question we have to ask ourselves today is this: where in our own lives are we holding on to our resources with a closed fist when we should be actively opening our hands to those around us?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.